Europeans have been fighting amongst themselves since the beginning of their time, since their origins in the Caucasus Mountains. And it's important to understand this because you have the great teachers like the ancestor Cheikh Anta Diop that talks about the story of the ice people and how the resources and the agriculture in Europe didn't produce the way it did in Africa. You see what I'm saying? The sunlight in Europe wasn't hitting the way it was hitting in Africa. Due to this this terrible environment, the Europeans were forced to develop this angry mindset, this angry personality. They were forced to do things that kill each other and eat each other, cannibalism. They were forced to develop and adjust and adapt to the environment they were brought up in. You could study Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, an ancestor who talks about the genetic survival of the Europeans. Everything the Europeans do is for survival because they originated in a survival environment. So that survival instinct is built into their DNA. You see what I'm saying? So it's important to understand this, right? All of the wars we learn about, we could go to the period of the Greeks and the Romans. The Romans enslaved the Greeks. You see what I'm saying? Europeans fighting amongst themselves. The Vandals, sacked the Roman Empire. Europeans fighting amongst themselves. You could go all the way up into the wars we learn about, World War I. Actually, we go before that. You go to the Berlin Conference. Europeans fighting amongst themselves. Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, all of these European nations fighting amongst themselves. All these nations go up, which led to World War I. You know what I mean? You have Austria, you have Hungary, you have so-called Great Britain, or I should say not so Great Britain. All of these European nations fighting amongst themselves. Go up to World War II. You have Germany and Poland. You have the U.S. You have the Soviet Union. Europeans fighting amongst themselves. This is their history. This is their history, right? You go up to the Cold War. You had the U.S. and you had the Soviet Union, rising in tension because after World War II, the Soviet Union gains control over Eastern Europe. The U.S. gains control over Western Europe. Now, the U.S. and the Soviet Union start going at it because, the Soviet Union's like, man, we want to spread communism. And the U.S. is like, nah, we want to spread capitalism. So this is why tension started to raise because the U.S. is like capitalism. And then the Soviet Union is like, no, communism. They're going at it with each other. This is what led up to the Cold War, even though they never fought, right? But the point I'm trying to make is they've been fighting amongst themselves since the beginning of time. When World War III finally breaks out, that is going to be because Europeans are fighting amongst themselves. This is their history. In this aspect, despite fighting amongst themselves, they still know how and when to put that fighting to the side and to focus on the majority. This is why Europeans at the moment have control over the world. They have control over parts of Africa. They have control over parts of, all of the U.S. They have control over South Central America, Caribbeans, because even despite them fighting amongst themselves, even though they don't like each other, they still know, let's chill out for a second. Let's take control of what we want to take control of. And then after we do that, we'll get back to fighting each other on that same time. Because as you can see, our people are fighting each other globally. We don't have to like each other, right? We don't have to like each other, but let's at least put the fighting to the side to build ourselves up. That's one thing I'll give Europeans. They don't fucking like each other. History shows Europeans do not like each other at all. They don't. But they know when to stop that fighting to build themselves up. I got to give them credit there. We have to do the same thing. We don't have to like each other in order to build ourselves up. You see, Europeans fighting amongst themselves, this is their history, bro. This is their history. You can't any point in time in history where Europeans are not fighting amongst themselves. But look what they do. They're in control of the world right now. We got to do something similar to that. You see what I'm saying?